welcome to Scott's Amateur Woodshop. Today I'm going to tell you about what I think should be the third tool that you buy after you've bought your knife and your small hand plane. And it's a saw. What I think you should buy is a Ryoba, which is a type of Japanese saw that is double-sided for both ripping and cross-cutting. Now, you can buy any kind of Ryoba. There are nice handmade ones. Those would certainly be fine if you feel like spending the money and eventually learning to sharpen it. For most beginners, though, I would recommend that you buy this one. It's made by a company called Vaughan, and they call it the bear saw. They make 4 saws in their line of Vaughan bear saws. Buy the one that's shaped like this. There'll be a link in the description. Now, when you buy this blade, this saw, you're really just buying a handle because the blade is replaceable, and you're going to have to replace it every now and then. They use what's called impulse hardening on the teeth, which makes them very hard and they stay sharp for a long time, but eventually they will go dull, and you have to buy a whole new blade. Now, if I recall correctly, this is about $20, and the replacement blade is about $10, so $10 for the handle and $10 every now and then for a new blade. Now, using a Japanese saw is a little different than using a Western saw, but it's very versatile. You can make do without a workbench, and you will always have a use for this. Even if you go down the hand tool rabbit hole and you have a bunch of Western saws and a Western style workbench like I do, still sitting in the basement of my ex-wife's house, this is still useful. It will get you out of a jam. Sometimes you need to work from a different position, and this will be better. This is also a good saw to learn to saw with. As you pull, you put tension into the blade, which helps it stay straight, so it doesn't need to have a back on it to stiffen it. And that's why this blade can be so thin. And it also avoids some of the nasty kinks that you might get as a beginner when you're pushing a saw to do the cutting. So with that as an explanation, I'd like to show you how to make a cut. So here I've got a piece of French cleat material. I have other videos about French cleats if you're interested. This one is cut off at an angle, and I just want to square it up. Now, you also might find a piece of wood that looks like it would make a good coaster, and you might want to cut off a square at the end and use that as a coaster. That would be another good reason, and we'll probably have a video about that soon. But in any case, the first step in making a cut, unless it's a very rough cut, is to mark a line. So take your square and, oh, wait a second. Now, if you've been taking my advice, you might not have a square yet. So, find yourself a piece of paper, or better yet, a 3x5 index card. Fold it in half. Match it corner to corner. Now, you have a makeshift square. Take a pencil. I hope you can find one of those. I didn't tell you to buy one, but let's not be ridiculous. And put this note card on the corner of your board and mark 2 lines, one on this face and one on this face. Now, the skill you're going to be practicing is cutting to a line. Just like 2 points define a line, 3 points define a plane. And when we cut this, we're going to leave a planar surface defined by 3 points. One end of this line, the other end of this line, and the other end of this line. So that's 3 points connected by 2 lines is what I just drew. You're going to start by putting the blade so that it is on one side of the line, wherever the waist side is. You're going to use your thumb to guide the saw. Now, you're going to use whatever work surface you can come up with. I have a stool here just to show you that it doesn't have to be a workbench. You could use a milk crate, you could use a box, you could use a toolbox. You use what you have. Use a chair if you have to. Those are not ideal because they're not going to have a flat seat necessarily, but use what you have. Now, the curvature of my thumb is going to touch the saw plate, but not the teeth. I'm going to put the saw blade right up against that line, and I'm going to take a gentle pull along the corner. Now, I'm going to start following this line as I go, tilting the saw, creeping along this line. And I'm going to go along the other line a little bit and creep down the other way, changing the angle as I go, follow this line a bit. Now I'm going to go back to the other line, change the angle gradually, creep along this line a bit. Pretty soon you're going to get to the point where you cannot screw it up anymore. You have already defined your plane, and all you have to do is rip it. Now you might notice this board has moved on me a couple of times. That is information. That tells me that I am putting too much weight down on the saw and I need to be lighter. What you want to do is move the teeth back and forth quickly with light pressure. That's how you saw. So, continuing along the lines and defining our plane. Now this piece is a little awkward. If I was cutting on the other end of this, I could be following the lines like this, and then I could be pulling the saw down. That would pull the board down onto the top of this stool and keep it stable. Because I'm right-handed and this edge has a cleat, and this is the end I want to cut off, I am doing this a little awkwardly, but pretty soon I will hopefully be able to pull down and show you what that's like. But I'm just putting my weight down on this hand. I have this lined up so that the cut I'm making is hanging a little bit off the edge of the stool, not a lot, because if it was a lot, it would want to vibrate more. So I'm using my body position to my advantage. If you find yourself drifting one way or the other, you want to move your whole body over a little bit. See how I move my whole body? It adjusts the place where the saw naturally wants to be. You want to move your body to the place so that you don't have to fight against yourself, so that the cut that you're making wants to follow the line. Then when you steer it to make it follow the line, it's a very easy job to do. So I'm continuing this cut. Now I've established a plane. It would be hard to go off track now. And now that I've gotten this far, I'm just going to say I can't really screw it up. I'm going to flip this whole thing over and I'm going to show you what it looks like to just... Now I can power through. And we're done. These things cut pretty fast. It's a great tool. Now, how do you know if you're using the correct side of it? You've got a rip side and a crosscut side, as I mentioned. Well, here's how you know. The crosscut side actually has 2 little rows of teeth. I'm probably not going to be able to show it to you on camera. I might try, but each of those teeth works like a knife. One row of teeth severs the fibers of the wood on this side of the cut, and the other severs the fibers over on this side of the cut. And then the rest of the tooth kind of pushes the chips and makes them fall out. The rip teeth work a little differently. They work like a chisel. Now, I don't have a chisel handy right now, but I have this piece of plastic tool called a spudger that's kind of shaped like a chisel. So if you can imagine that this is a chisel tooth, what it does is it severs the fibers going like this and then splits them out. And so all you have to do is look at the saw closely, and that will help you determine which side you should be using. Now the other approach is you simply try cutting with one side, and then you try cutting with the other side, and you see which works more accurately and faster. Now I'm going to attempt to show you these teeth, but the camera's probably not going to focus. We'll try. This is the rip side. It looks like this from the side, and from the end Yeah, you probably can't really see this. It's like a row of little chisels, each facing this way. Cut, 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 cut. Okay. Now the cross-cut side looks like this from the side, and from your perspective now, there should be kind of like a front row and a back row of teeth. Yeah, unfortunately the camera's not focusing. Let's see, from the end, yeah, you can't really see. So I used the cross-cut side for this because I was severing across the fibers. If I was cutting lengthwise along this board, along the same direction as the fibers, I would be using the ripping side because that's a ripping cut. So I highly recommend this tool or another Ryoba as your first saw and perhaps the third tool that you buy. And with that, I think we'll wrap up. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And thanks for coming to Scott's Amateur Woodshop. Don't forget to use the buttons. And I will see you later. Bye now.